So first of all, as I delve into this topic of why agility splits GE, let me clarify that this is not a critique. I worked at GE. I deeply admired that company, and there were some terrific things that I learned from being in that organization. And I know Peter has actually had a stint with GE too, and we'll exchange notes at the end of it. So my story, the way I want to position it is to try and analyze it through the lens of agility by actually reading a couple of lines that GE put out as part of their statement announcing the split of the company into three distinct entities. So let me read this to you. Each company will be better positioned to serve its customers, benefiting from greater focus, accountability, and agility. The interesting part about this is that it is an industrial conglomerate. Jack Welch made it into a massive, complex industrial consumer mix of play of strategy, resulting in it being valued at almost $600 billion. Not too far away, actually, it was in the year 2000. And at one point, you would almost think that GE had a shot at becoming the first $1 trillion valued company, which of course it was Apple much later today. Now, this year alone, GE employs, I think, about 174,000 employees. In 2000, they had almost 300,000 plus. And all of this transition is pretty obvious to where we are today. Now, why did it take an outsider CEO, Larry Culp, to come and have the courage to do the most, I would say, it's probably a historic decision, as historic as Jack Welch turning this, struggling $30 billion company into a massive enterprise. Now, one of the reasons for that is that both Jeff Immelt and John Flannery were brought up in what they called as the GE way, right? So it's a very profound belief that culture transcends industry, that the way leaders are brought up in GE they can pretty much run any business globally. And by the way, to a large extent is true because a lot of people who left in these succession processes went on to head companies like eBay and others and run them very, very successfully. But let me take you back to 2018 with the story of United Technologies. At that point of time, United Technologies was pretty much at an inflection point of what should be their next journey look like. And then they went into three different businesses, one around air conditioning, one around elevators, and the other one obviously was core United Technologies that stayed with them. And that therefore propelled the company back into greatness. But United Technologies is not the only industrial conglomerate that went through a transition like this. Siemens is another great example. So Siemens went through this transition way before GE. Now, the interesting part about Siemens is that Siemens for a long time admired the GE model. They were trying to mimic it. Leaders in Siemens were envious of the GE model, and they were obviously competitors in multiple spaces, including healthcare. Yesterday, the CFO of Siemens issued a statement that Siemens felt validated by looking at what GE is going through today. So in many ways, the question that we ask is this the era of industrial conglomerates getting eaten up by technology platform ecosystem companies? Or is it something that the industrial companies could have done very differently in how they digitized themselves and adopted themselves? So one of the initiatives in GE Digital was called Predix. It was an analytics platform that collected data from every moving machines that GE operated, maintained across the world, whether it was turbines, airplane engines, and all of this was, they built a huge data center in France, hired 1,000 data scientists. However, you see that GE had a struggle imagining its business to be a very technology platform businesses. This is the company at one point of time we bought a refrigerator from, our light bulb from, supplied electricity to cities, and a whole bunch of other things. So GE could have easily been the first fintech company on the planet. GE could have been easily what we call today as a super app in those days if they had the thinking. So the ideas that GE was known for got eaten up, obviously part by the financial crisis where they were exposed to subprime, part due to 9/11 where the aviation business took a hit. But having said that, even Jack Welch and John Flannery knew at some point the company had just become too unwieldy. So in comes Larry Culp, and in my view, Larry Culp actually with this decision has replaced Jack Welch as the greatest 21st century manager. That's what Fortune, I think, magazine called Jack Welch at one point of time. So let me close up with, in my argument, what are the three things that worked or could have been done differently, or the lessons that we have from this transition of GE. And by the way, it is the right thing to be doing. It's not, again, a criticism. First, GE lost the big tech game. And as I mentioned, Predix was good, but it was not necessarily, in a space that could integrate the company, the business model, the data, and a whole bunch of other consumer-centric activities that they were doing, or even integrate their own customers. So big technology, platform thinking kind of a business model was absent for GE. Second, shaping strategy at the intersection of industries. Now, conglomerates obviously are in question as a business model because they base on sharing resources, leveraging each other's debt, so leveraging each other's assets for borrowing, leadership capabilities, corporate umbrellas, etc. But having said that, all of the companies today that rule the market, whether it's Alphabet, Apple, Amazon, then we have these players called Grab, OpenSea, etc. in Southeast Asia. All of these companies actually are multi-industry thinkers. They may not be a conglomerate, but they actually have a business model that is integrated through a technology platform thinking business model. So you still need to think cross-industry, even if you're in healthcare, even if you're in energy sector, and even if you're core industrial aviation businesses. The third one, I think this is my favorite, do not be too proud of your culture. Because being too proud of your culture has prevented one manager and after another manager brought up in the proud GE culture to make those tough choices. In the Jack Welch days, there were 4 E's as values of GE. One of them was called edge, the ability to make tough decisions. Now, that edge went missing when you become overly proud of the culture that you have. And that's where Larry Culp stepped in to address that issue. Now, as I said, Larry Culp has done probably one of the most historic decisions seen in corporate America. And I think he's right on top there in terms of the 21st century, truly modern enterprise thinking leader who can reshape companies probably every 50 to 100 years. With that,